Hello and welcome everybody to the Novocastrian Live number 7. At least I think it's number 7. The hidden history of the Roman frontier in northern Britain. How you doing, Caleb?
Doing good.
Excellent. Okay, so last time we left off, we kind of we skirted around a lot of things because we were trying to feel our way through. We were trying to feel our way around this mysterious sculpture and find out what we could garner from its significance in the place. And I guess, as a, we should really refresh people and just remind people of what that was. So I'll get up a picture here, which shouldn't be too far away. There it is. We're already doing this crazy stuff again because we have to get inventive here for our presentations. In fact, before, oh wait, there we go. Caleb's got it up already. There it is, Give and Take by Peter Randall. And we've already established that this is a dragon egg, or it looks like a dragon egg. Certainly serpentine, which will be important for this discussion today, especially because we found out some extraordinary things about Severus Septimus and Julia Domna. But we've also established that it looks like the Elagabalus stone, which Ralph Ellis talked about on one of our live streams, which was Tracking the Grail. And if you haven't seen that one after this podcast, you should definitely go back and look at that and listen very carefully. This week I went back and got I transcribed a lot of the discussion we had there and slowed it down. And when I when I did that and actually looked at what was being said carefully, I realized, oh wow, no, actually, you know what? It sounds like Ralph Ellis has already done a lot of the heavy lifting on this, and I went ahead and bought his book, The Grail Cipher. But we'll get into that in a bit, because wow, what a journey we've been on this week when we've been researching this. But yes, the Give and Take stone. No, it's in a significant place. There's a lot of other things that I didn't bring up the last time when we talked. This Elagabalus looking like look-alike sculpture is about 50 meters away from the Crown Court. It's funny because this sculpture almost seems like it's made out of marble, and they say it's a glacial stone, but I mean, the glacial stones that they came from the mountains, right? There's some of these glacial stones must have came from the mountains. And we've also established that the Elagabalus stone was called the deity associated with the stone was called God of the Mountain. Let me just adjust this here. Yes, it's called the God of the Mountain. Actually, Sean Ross has talked about marble and how the pharaohs like to use this particular stone to make a statement about their status. About he calls it the joining. He called and it's a part of stating that you are part of the old world order, and this old world order was worldwide at one point. The Crown Court has made the pillars that surround the court, the court building are all marble as well, and the Crown Court it is on the line of this ancient stream called Pandan. Just above like another 50 meters to the west, up the hill, up a street called Silver Street, which is significant because Harold Bailey makes a mention of this in his Archaic England. He talks about Silver Street being ubiquitous throughout England wherever there was former sacred sites of the Druids. And the Silver Street, from give and take from the sculpture, Peter Randall's sculpture, goes up to All Saints Church, one of the oldest and most illustrious churches in Newcastle, and all of the prominent mayors and aldermans and things like that in the past buried there. Up the top of the hill, and this thing, obviously, this hill is right next door to this burn or dean or stream, this little valley that is mostly culverted and infilled now. So there's a lot more than just this sculpture to indicate that there was something pretty significant here. So this is a former sacred site. This hill was probably. I've had visions sort of since of the Druids doing sacrifices and things on there. For some reason, I thought of the Box Saga as well. I thought of certain things, people they would throw off hills, or people would jump off these heights in certain rituals. And there's something about this place, certainly, that it is pretty significant, and it has an aura about it of sacredness, or at least former sacredness. But yes, we've done a lot of research on the Elagabal stone this weekend. But at first we went to a book called The Cults of Rome. Let's have a look. Let's get this up. Could you say more? Could you say what the title is, bro, and tell me about this book that you looked into and that you took screenshots of? Oh, that's it. The Cults of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
By Robert Turgan. Yeah. So we started here, and I think actually it's a good place to start, really, to talk about the Elagabal stone and its significance.
Yeah, well, after last week's show, we were kind of going back and forth a little bit about why would there be this symbolism in this area around the Hadrian's Wall, and we kind of were looking at Septimius Severus as sort of the prime suspect about who, was kind of responsible for the symbolism. But then our attention kind of got shifted to his wife even more, because we were looking at the phoenix symbol, and looking at the possibility that it was his symbol, but then we had to look and see, if it was his wife's symbolism, actually. And from what, so we kind of decided to focus in on her specifically. Her name is Julia Domna, and she's the wife of Septimius Severus. And both of them are from Syria, but different parts of Syria. And specifically, she is from Emesa, which is a location of the Elagabal cult. And they actually venerated this stone, so she's a prime suspect for why you would find this stone in the same area where her husband built a wall, right? So, her she comes from a mesa, but she comes from a family of priest, basically a priest family, from a mesa. So her ancestors are fully entrenched in this cult, this religious cult. And it's funny though, because when you look at a lot of different writings about her, um, she they she isn't viewed as being sort of making an effort to spread her native religion into the Roman Empire. But that religion of hers, you know, like her original religion from her country of origin, and her city of origin specifically, Emesa in Syria, the Elagabal cult. Um, I think her marriage to Septimius Severus does mark the vector or the point of entry for that cult into the Roman Empire, uh, in a really significant way. Not to say that the cult hadn't made steps into the Roman Empire before, but I think that that was a big point in history, uh, for it to happen even more. Um, but you know, writers don't look at her as being uh, very well. You know, maybe when we pull up some quotes, you'll understand that they don't look at her as being like a fanatic of her own religion. You know, they point to the fact that she sort of went along with Roman religious concepts, and she wasn't too keen on bringing her religion into Rome and all this. But yeah, the truth may be that she was just keeping it on the down low, because what happens later is other family members that end up becoming, you know, descendants of hers later on in history, they would have they brought that religion, or that they brought that cult in more strongly later on, but they never would have had a chance to if she didn't already lay the groundwork for them to have a position in Roman society later on. Specifically, it's her grand nephews, uh, Emperor Elagabalus, later on. So, in other words, it's her sister's son's son. So, her grandnephew, um, is Emperor Elagabalus, and he brought the cult into prominence in the Roman Empire for a short amount of time. Um, but it was during these times that the cult had a chance to spread, and we could you know, spend the rest of our lives probably um, tracking down where all of these little offshoots managed to, you know, sort of spread to and hide, you know, and maybe even survive for a really long time. Um, but yeah, so we're gonna look at Julia Domna specifically, and uh, yeah, we'll just see where it goes.
So Julia Severus Septimus was, I think he was born in Libya, um, modern day Libya. Ralph Ellis later on clarifies in the Grail cipher that he did come from Libya, but he also says earlier on in the book that that both Julia Domna and Severus Septimus came from Syria. So I'm guessing he was born in Libya, from Libya, but spent most of his time in Syria and was based there, fully immersed in all the culture. But yes, so in yeah, good. Just getting back to it, yeah. Why we found the give and take sculpture so interesting was because on the Elagabal stone there is on the coins that were minted for the Roman Empire when Emperor Elagabalus was in power. They show that the Elagabal stone has a phoenix on it, and the last live stream I showed a picture of the Wall's End coat of arms, and there's a few of these, and actually on other ones it looks even more like a phoenix. And I actually looked up what a phoenix would actually look like on a heraldic coat of arms, and it looked even more like it. It was exactly the way it was supposed to be depicted as a heraldic emblem, and the way a phoenix is specifically depicted. And unlike last week, I said that Wall's End is 6 miles away from. That's probably because I live here and it just feels long. Feels as long because it's so dense here in Newcastle. It's the city seems to be getting bigger and bigger every year. But yeah, I made a mistake there, and it was only 2 miles instead of 6 miles. So it's not very far away at all. And there's a bunch of other signs. This week I found out that Severus Septimus. This is the thing. When you talk about Julia Domna, you can't really talk about Julia Domna without talking about Severus Septimus, and vice versa. They kind of go hand in hand. And yes, Wall's End. It it sorry. In Newcastle, there's a famous sculpture and rendering of what the Tyne god, Tyne, the River Tyne, would look like if he were a god. And this has kind of been run with for, in the city planners and the civic architecture, the commissioners of these works. The way that there's kind of a cult almost about this river and the way it's been deified. But it's funny because in the ways that he's been deified match, say, Severus Septimus's favored cults. And one of his favored cults was Serapis. And Serapis was always depicted with a modius, basket of seeds. That's another name for it as well. I can't remember what, but we'll just stick with modius. And Serapis was a serpent god, as I'll show. But first, I'll just show you the Tyne god sculpture, because I showed this last time when I was looking at the Freemasons lodge banners, sort of hinting that there was something else going on here with these sculptures, the knowledge, and that we also went into last week that and exposed, because it's not common knowledge, that maybe Hadrian's Wall was not built by Hadrian, and maybe it was built by Severus. And in the Freemasons and prominent historical chroniclers of this town know it, play on it, and part of the arcana of secrecy that surrounds this whole country, that is gatekept by these fraternities, we try to illuminate, at least from my backyard, at least looking at my area, and also let's just make it specific that this is not should I say, let's state clearly that this is happening all around Britain. Okay, There's a reason why Leeds is called the City of Owls, and they have a thing about owls. There's a reason why Manchester has a thing about bees and beehives, and there's a reason why London has a thing about dragons. And but apparently in Newcastle they have a thing about Serapis, which is strange, and the many different iterations of Serapis, because he was quite an interesting god. And well, let me see if I can show you this. So this is the Time God sculpture. I do apologize. Last time when I did this, it didn't seem to clear up very well. And it's like almost my Wi-Fi was catching up. Caleb, can you see this all right?
Yeah.
See it clearly? Yeah. Okay, so there's a Modius, and it's on fire, right? Which gives me anyway, ideas of Lightbringer and Lucifer, the light of Lucifer, and Lady Liberty, which we know you can conflate these two very easily and be correct on that conflation. But not getting away from that. Yeah, but one of his main cults, Severus Septimus, was the Serapis cult. And I'll get another picture up as well, just to sort of give you an idea of what Serapis was about, and just how fruity this guy, this deity was. It's found it quite interesting. Before we get into major discoveries here, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna bring it up close. There we are. There, you can see. Can you see that clearly, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's the Modius on top there. As you can see, he's a serpent, right? And here's another one. He doesn't have the Modius there. There's another one. He has the serpent wrapped around him there, and it's almost like the serpentine course of the sun through space. Perhaps it's indicating there with the light rays coming out of his head. Here's another interesting one. This is Serapis and Isis depicted. Serapis, by the way, is often depicted with Isis, and I think that's Horus there. So it's I'm probably getting this wrong, but it's like a Greco-Egyptian cult. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, what was that down there? Oh, yeah. I was just looking at another painting as well as a Roman painting, which actually depicts Serapis with the Modius on top, but it almost looks like the way Severus Septimus was depicted as well in his Roman mosaic pictures with Julia Domna. Yeah, go ahead.
There's kind of on a different subject, but still the same subject. You know how Mithraism and the Sol Invictus cult are sort of different things, but they're kind of overlapped a little bit. You also got to, add in the Elagabalus cult into that mix as well, because there's like overlap there. They're different things, but they're overlap, and sometimes one can bleed into the other.
Oh yeah.
I was telling you, I think the Mithras might be like a gateway drug to the other cults. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's of course. We were talking about how it was like a dragon egg last week, and we were also talking about how the council chamber it looks like an egg. It looks like a cave, and it looks like an entheogenic mushroom. We also talked about Mithras coming out of the egg, out of the cosmic egg, and how we've already made these. We'll leave it for later because this is this will tie in later when we get down to it. This goes all the way to Sean Ross. I mean, I didn't even know. I just want to mention this before I forget, because I don't like to script a lot of things. I like to riff as it comes along, you know. But did you know that Sean Ross is learned um in Ralph Ellis's work? Oh yeah, yeah. I was watching the Swiss Beast yesterday, and he flashed one of his works up, and I was like, he knows this man's on a level, you know. and and after reading some more, I mean, I have some of Ralph Ellis's works, but I hadn't picked up the Grail cipher yet. And wow, yeah, I kind of understand why he freaks out a little bit when he goes to places like Parasol and sees these reptilian sculptures. In fact, man, it sucks because that's one thing I forgot to get was a picture of this reptilian humanoid sculpture in this Templar commandery vineyard in France. And it's just astonishing, especially when we connect this up, this serpentine Elagabalus, supposedly a facsimile of a meteorite stone that they used to worship as a deity. And it kind of sets things, once you start thinking on the lines of who these people think that they're serving, it slaps you across the head and you think, oh my God, I mean, was Alex Jones right? Was he not? So many times people be taking the piss out of this guy, and yeah, how many times does he have to be proven right? As much as he is a showman and a grifter. But yes. Oh, yes. I've got this up as well, just to sort of show you it.
I mean,
Go ahead.
Alex Jones had the balls to go into Bohemian Grove back in the day, and all these years later, Sean Ross, goes into these similar sorts of places. Why is it so few and far between that somebody has the balls to go check this shit out?
Yeah. I mean, of course, you could say that, oh, well, they let them in, they wanted some intrigue. They needed to reignite the no, I already said the intrigue, didn't I? The fascination with it, the curiosity. People, there's lots of things people say, right? But if you're a Christian, they say, look at him, judge a man by his fruits. So, but yes, Serapis. It wasn't just Serapis who had a Modius on his head. This deity did as well. Oh, there we go. And she's called Artemis Ephesus. And these aren't breasts, by the way. These are. Can you see this all right, bro? Yeah.
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 Those are bull's testicles, and she has lots of little animals around here, and down here too. And why is she all black, right? You know that the Elagabalus stone was known as the Black Stone, right? It's curious that the give and take Randall sculpture is all white, but they do like to play on the whole black and white thing. And actually, at its base, there's a matte black base that the the sculpture sits on. So you're talking about gateway to Mithras, and also Cybele. Cybele wore a Modius as well at times. And Julia Domna styled herself as Cybele, and Severus Septimus allowed her to be styled as Cybele at the time. And Cybele is the goddess of the Galli priesthood, where they would cut off their manhoods in service to her to, I mean, this is assumptions, obviously, and speculation. But in order to identify more with the goddess, I can't remember Sibel's little. Oh yeah, Attis, right? It's the Attis and Sibel. So Attis was the good old minion of Sibel, the goddess, and it's very very strange because Sibel with the Gali cult, they seem to be rather connected to the Elgabal stone too. And why Caleb talks about the Mithras cult being similar is because, I mean, the things that they do in the Mithras cult would take away to take away part of your masculinity. They had homosexual rites of passage, and they would. Do you want to help me with this particular part? What kinds of rites of passage would you say that were quite derogatory?
Well, you know, the classic image of Mithraism is Mithras slaying the bull, right? You even have a version of this in the constellations where you have Taurus, the bull, right next to Orion. And Orion, you know, is got his club up, you know, like he's about to kill something. So, you know, you have the two there, it's Mithras slaying the bull again, even in the constellations. And back in the days of Hannibal, and the wars between Carthage and Rome, you actually had part of the Cybele cult was operating in Carthage, and Romans were joining the cult, but they would undergo the full initiation of castration and everything, and it was causing outrage in Rome because children were coming home to their parents, or young men were coming back home to their parents with no balls. So, you know, it was causing an outrage because, you know, there's the end of your family line because your son just went and got his balls hacked off, you know. So Rome passed a law where you couldn't be a citizen of Rome and have, castrated genitals, you know, because it was that big of a problem. So later on, the cult came up with a different type of ceremony that they could initiate new members into without compromising their Roman citizenship. So what they did was they dug a really deep hole, and they had the new initiate climb down inside of the hole, and then they would close the hole up with these boards that had all these tiny little holes in it, and then they would drag a bull. Remember how we said, you know, the classic symbol is Mithraism is Mithras slaying the bull? Well, they bring the bull over the boards and slay it right there on top of their initiate who's down in the hole, right? Yeah. Where we got? Oh shit. Yeah, exactly. So there's the dude in the hole, and he's just taking a bath, you know, a shower in the fucking blood of the bull. And they did that because it was no longer legal to castrate yourself in Rome. So they just invented a new ritual like this So that's what the new members would do to get initiated into the cult. And they had to keep their eyes open. You know, they had to open their mouth. They had to like let it in. You know, completely. They couldn't just half-ass it. You know. So yeah. So I think that Mithraism is sort of a gateway drug into these other cults. You know, they're separate cults, but one can be sort of, there's enough overlap between like Sol Invictus and the Elagabalus cult and the Mithra cult. There's enough overlap where one can be the gateway drug into the next one.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Should we read a bit from what you sent me from the booklet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is for the cults of Rome. From a section on the Elgabal. On the road from Palmyra to the sea, at the crossroads, with the one leading from Heliopolis to Apamea, then to Antioch on the Orontes. From an unknown time, a cult had been established at Emesa, Homs, worshipping a black aerolith called Elagabal, or God of the Mountain. This sugarloaf-shaped beetle was taken to be a sacred image of the invincible sun, Sol Invictus. Several coins show him in his temple behind an eagle, which, as in the case of other Syrian gods, symbolically embodies celestial sovereignty. On other coins, the eagle is seen perched on the aerolith. It's not an eagle, though. It's a phoenix. But anyway, getting back to it. Which was dressed, so it seems, on the occasion of certain ceremonies in a cloak circled with garlands and gleaming with gemstones. A monumental altar bearing the figures of many gods subordinate to this god, who is identified with both Zeus and Helios, stood in the sanctuary courtyard. His high priest danced there in a gold-embroidered purple tunic, his head crowned with jewels of myriad colours. The beetle was fated to the sound of flutes and trumpets. And the first time I read this, I told Pierre about, don't the Thelemite priests dress up in purple and dance while they're doing their rituals? Since the end of the Seleucids' reign in 64 BC, an Arab dynasty of priest kings had ruled in Emesa, and in the 1st century AD had acquired Roman citizenship by virtue of their loyalty towards the ruling power and services rendered, notably in Corbulo's war against the Parthians, then Vespasian's and Titus's war against the Jews. This kind of priestly principality had kept a semblance of autonomy by dint of providing Rome with horsemen and archers like Palmyra, until the reign of Antonius Pius. The temple and its clergy were rich. Elagabal attracted a good many pilgrims and visitors, motivated by devoutness or curiosity. And this is from Herodian, Roman History, verses 3-5. The god is not worshipped by the natives alone. All the barbarian kings and satraps in the neighborhood annually send him as many magnificent offerings as he could desire. However, the prestige of the Black Stone of Emesa did not go beyond the ports of the Levant until the day when the high priest of Elagabal married one of his daughters to the Roman governor of Lugdunensis, the future emperor Septimius Severus. He had stayed in Syria when in command of a legion there. Like others, he had made the pilgrimage to Emesa, probably as a tourist, but this African from Leptis, who was also fascinated by Egyptian gods, was not immune from all religious disquiet. his accession as imperator in 193 made an empress of Julia Domna, who with her sister Julia Mesa was heiress to the priestly dynasty. It is then that one finds the epigraph evidence of the Emessian migrants' fidelity to their ancestral god. Their cohorts of mounted archers stationed in Pannonia, chiefly at Intercissa on the banks of the Danube, or in Africa at El Cantara on the edges of the desert, paid him emphatic homage, the expression of a religious patriotism strengthened by the enthronement of an Emessin woman in the palace of the Caesars. In Rome itself, late 2nd century inscriptions bear witness to the presence of a college of priests and an organized cult outside of the Pomerium, probably in the Trastevere district, where, like several other Levantine gods, Sol Invictus Elagabalus, for instance, had a chapel. In AD 201, a priest, Julius Balbilius, consecrated the image of an eagle to the god. Nevertheless, Julia Domna was not seen to encourage, still less promote, the religion of her forebears in the herbs. And we'll find out later this doesn't really hold weight. This cultured great lady who presided in the Palatine over a court of Greek and Latin writers and intellectuals seems to have shown no kind of attachment, either personal or family, to the worship of the Beetle. And it says here that she doubtless preferred to be compared by the poet Oppian to the Uranian Aphrodite or Venus Astarte. But
it's interesting that the author doesn't question that at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't seem right to me. The high priest married her into the Romans,
and she wasn't a priestess herself of a secret priestess,
right? Her entire lineage is the high priest of this cult. And then they marry her into the Romans and she becomes empress, and all of a sudden she's just not interested in her own religion anymore. But later on it does become rise into prominence in Rome. Why can't the author here at least give recognition to that fact and say that, hey, maybe she was advised to keep it quiet for a little while, and just go along and do as the Romans do and work on getting some doorways opened up, which she did. She got a lot of groundwork laid down, which later on allowed her great nephew to become emperor and spread the cult. So I don't know why this author has to act like, oh, she wasn't interested in her own religion at all. She was just doing as the Romans do.
Right.
Of course she was doing as the Romans do. But whatever.
No, I mean, it completely makes sense in the other direction, though, that you would keep it quiet, that you weren't going to advertise this, that you weren't going to completely try and subterfuge your own religion in there gradually once your descendants were on the throne.
And plus you don't try to change everything within the first 5 minutes of getting your foot in the door, as a strategy.
Of course.
If you just got your foot in the door, you're gonna, kind of shut the fuck up for a little while, and then go along to get along, but you know, be strategic, and then maybe later on, once things are a little more settled, then you can start changing things. And it looks like she never actively um, played a role in really changing things, but her descendants did. But she's the one who got her descendants sort of born into the system. You know, so it wasn't her job to spread her religion. It was her job to get in and make it possible for her descendants and other
Yeah.
branches of her family to do that, you know.
Oh yeah.
So her sister's son's son was Emperor Elagabalus, Julia Domna's grand nephew.
That's right. And they wanted to
Yeah,
keep things quiet and on the down low, but it didn't quite work out for them that way. Do believe her, Julia Domna's son, Gita, I think that's how you spell it. Gita was murdered by his own brother, Caracalla. Actually, his nickname was Caligula. I think people will recognize that name if you've seen that movie before. So he was Caracalla killed his own brother, and then Caracalla was killed by Macrinus, his Praetorian prefect. Um, and, and then Julia Domna was either made to kill herself by starvation, or she was or she was heartbroken. So I guess their attempt to quietly mosey on in there didn't really go down too well, and it just got worse with Elagabalus. um, he really wasn't successful in his mission, as we'll find out. um, so yeah, should I go? Should I talk? Yeah, I mean, you've already talked about how they that they didn't like their sons coming back castrated after they went to after they went to after they went to Carthage. Is that right? Yeah.
right.
After they went to go fight over there, and so they try to make up a new cult to sort of satisfy that. Um, what else? Let's see now. I think that's it's a good sort of introduction on the mainstream look at it. That book was published by Routledge, and it's quite obvious that the author has some kind of um I don't know he's maybe he has an agenda, or maybe he was given an agenda to make it less interesting, make it as boring as possible, because when you go to Ralph Ellis, it's certainly a different kind of situation. Should we just go straight to it? Straight to Ralph Ellis's quotes on it, or
Yeah, yeah, and let's bring it up into the northern England kind of area as well as we go along.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Well, I mean, we have to talk about um. Well, last week we talked about the Picts Dyke, and it caused a little confusion with me this week, because we established that last week that from Commons Beaumont, or from Commons Beaumont's point of view, that it was Hadrian who built this massive ditch from Scotland to the Tyne, and went further south than the Tyne, actually, um, for a distance. A massive ditch where they just dug up the earth and then tossed it on either side. So it's like this massive moat that stretched from Scotland to the borderlands. Um, so, but this week I found out that Severus Septimus built something very similar to the Picts' dyke, the Picts' work ditch, it's called. And actually, we'll be talking about that. I want to talk about that. The Picts' work dyke, this earthwork that I want to bring because I found some northeastern chroniclers actual assessment, archaeological assessment on it, and his takes on it, which were very interesting. But we'll have to go into that another week. For this week, I found out that Severus Septimus built something very similar to this earthwork, and actually, Hadrian's wall, before there was a wall, was the same. Was the same. It was a ditch. It was called the Vallum, and I brought that up last week when I showed the Freemasons. I'm going to actually get that. It's just here. So when I said, I'm pretty sure a couple of weeks ago I said, it did, from my knowledge, they weren't in the habit of making these ditches, but apparently I was wrong. Because there's like a 177-mile long earthwork called Offa's Dyke in Wales, which it goes from the Bristol Channel all the way south to the other end of Wales. 177 miles. And yeah, when I sent this to Caleb first, I said 126 miles. I got that wrong. So 170. I couldn't believe it. Let me just find this picture of the Vallum. I can't. Let's have a look. This is the book here, History of Freemasonry in Wallsend. Rather interesting book. I mean, not a lot of illuminating information, but the symbolism in there is quite interesting. This is the Vallum Lodge, and Hadrian's Wall. What was just a Vallum at first? It was just a massive ditch, just dug out from one end to the other, from one end of northern Britain to the next, to Carlisle. There we go, and that they thought it's so important that they made that one of the lodges, they named one of their lodges out of it, and yeah, you can see Hadrian's Wall in the background where they built it right next to it. So there's that. Let's get some pictures up of this Offa's Dyke, because this is where our story begins with Offa's Dyke, and where we're going to like read like a whole chapter from from Ralph Ellis's work. Now, at the risk of us being disrespectful, it is a 1,000-page book, the Grail Cipher. So half a chapter out of this book, it's not going to make much of an indentation. We would love Ralph Ellis to come on here and give us a whole talk on this book or the whole series. We already did one, but specifically from this point of view. Let me see if I can get this up here quickly. This is Offa's Dyke. So this is it, and this thing stretches across the whole of Wales. And they actually they built a road through this thing because Britain's the people who manage the land here in Britain are a bunch of a-holes. And well, Ralph explains it better than I do in the book, actually. I'm from reading Ralph Ellis's works, I'm beginning to understand he's he's he doesn't give a crap. He puts his humor is excellent. So that is Offa's Dyke. It is said that a king of Mercia built this, but we're going to get into right now how it is not. This earthwork was built by Severus Septimus, and nobody knows it except Ralph Ellis, who's done the legwork for everybody. So yeah, off of Dyke. Oh, yeah. Before we do that, just quickly, here's a map of where it goes from. Yeah, here we are. So they're from the Bristol Channel all the way down to past Cardiff, down to Newport. Sting, huge. Severus Septimus was a busy man. Okay, from Ralph Ellis's the Grail cipher. A tentative confirmation of these arguments can be seen in modern England, where there is a similar sinusoidal structure on the borders of England and Wales. This is Offa's Dyke, a great earthwork defence system that runs from north to south along the borders of Wales for up to 240 kilometres. According to some of the older claims, or just 100 kilometres according to more recent estimates. Surprisingly, for such a large civil engineering project, the monarch or leader who conceived and created this great project, and thus the era of its construction, are completely unknown. The monk by the name of Asa, who wrote a biography of King Alfred the Great, claimed that the Dyke was constructed by King Offa in the 8th century, a claim that has endured to this day. Just a mound of earth and completely destroyed. Oh, hold on. I must have cut this bit out here. But he explains, if I remember, that they built a road through this thing, just thinking that it was just a mound of earth, and they completely destroyed that section. The only fortunate thing about this minor tragedy is that it exposed some of the original grass turfs from when the dike was built, and the radiocarbon dating of these organic remains suggested that the dike was centuries earlier than the reign of King Offa. But if this dike did not belong to King Offa, then who built it? The alternative suggestion is that this great engineering project was actually Roman and not Anglo-Saxon. Now, this was an era when great civil engineering projects like this were readily achievable, as is amply demonstrated by the Hadrian and Antonine walls, which stretch from coast to coast along the borders of Scotland. Now, as an aside, I, you know, I'm not completely sold on Commons Beaumont, but I'm not completely sold on Ralph Ellis or anybody. I'm always happy to entertain ideas and see them through and see which ones stick better. I mean, if it turns out that Severus did build this one, then maybe he built the Picts Dyke as well. Maybe Hadrian did build Hadrian's Wall, and that the big secret is that Severus built the Picts Dyke. Very, very, and there were consecutive Jewish uprisings and during Septimius Severus's reign also. Oh, wait, was it? No, I'm getting that wrong. Sorry. Forget what I just said there. But there was a lot of there was a lot of events going on at that time, and we just don't know what's going on really, and it's really important that we discuss these things. We bring all the information to the fore. So even though we talk about Commons Beaumont one week, Ralph Ellis here has such important, significant information that, to me, it's just as important as looking at Commons Beaumont. And these people are heroic for so many reasons, and the fact that Sean Ross is actually looking at Ralph Ellis's work, it just shows you that there's certain people when when they're looking into these things and investigating, almost like Ralph Ellis is like an Indiana Jones, and you have Sean Ross. He's like he he's almost like this He's like almost like a rogue James Bond character in a way. But these are renegades, right? And then they're not always going to agree, but in the course of looking at their work, they reveal so much more, and with each piece that they bring to the table, it fills out the picture even more. So, and these were not simply earthen structures, presumably with a wooden palisade on the top. These were great stone walls, 3 meters wide and 6 meters high, with a commanding walkway along the top and small fortresses at every mile. This is Hadrian's Wall he's talking about here. And it is from this richer and more productive Roman era that we find another description of a great defensive work being constructed. The Roman historian Eutropius says of the relatively unknown wall constructed by Emperor Septimius Severus. Severus had his most recent war in Britain, and to fortify the conquered provinces with all security, he built a wall for 133 miles from sea to sea. He died at York, a reasonably old man, in the 16th year and 3rd month of his reign. And that's from Historia Romanae Breviarium. The Historia Augusta agrees that Severus built a great wall. And although one has to be careful about the Historia Augusta because it contains satire as well as history, there is no reason why a comment about a mundane defensive wall should have been invented. Severus built a wall across the island of Britain from sea to sea, and thus made the province secure, the crowning glory of his reign. In recognition thereof, he was given the name Britannicus. Historia Augusta, Life of Severus, written around AD 395. Septimius Severus was a Roman emperor of the late 2nd and early 3rd century AD, and he did indeed do a considerable amount of campaigning in Britain. And although Cassius Dio does not mention it, he obviously built a wall of some nature. But which one? Geoffrey of Monmouth claimed that the Severn Wall stretched from Deira, or northwest England, to Albany, which is an archaic name for Scotland. It is often presumed that this is a reference to the Antonine Wall, which lies to the north of Hadrian's Wall. But the Antonine Wall was certainly constructed by Emperor Antonius Pius in the mid-2nd century, and so Monmouth must be incorrect, says Ralph. Furthermore, the description of the Severn Wall that we have from the Venerable Bede, who was writing before Monmouth, does not give the same details. Bede says, in the year of our Lord 189, Severus became emperor. He thought fit to divide that part of the island that he recovered from the other unconquered nations. Not with a wall, as some have imagined, but with a rampart, for a wall is made of stones. A rampart for which camps are fortified to repel enemies is made of sods cut out of the ground and raised high above the ground like a wall, having in front of it a trench from whence the sods were taken, with strong stakes of wood fitted above it. Thus Severus drew a great trench and rampart fortified with several towers from sea to sea. So, when Ralph Ellis shows the picture that I showed earlier of Offa's Dyke, and he has the picture in the book, and it shows it like almost snaking along. He makes a point of emphasizing that. He says, Offa's Dyke on the borders of England and Wales, an earthen rampart that winds its way across the countryside like an earthen snake for 400 kilometers or perhaps even 240 kilometers. This was actually the Severn Wall. So the Severn Wall was actually an earthen wall with a ditch in front of it and wooden stakes behind, and it was built from sea to sea. But which seas? Monmouth has obviously guessed that this wall was built between Britain and Scotland, but the attributions for the Hadrian and Antonine walls are quite certain, and so we can discount those constructions as belonging to Severus. And this leaves us with Offa's Dyke, which is, just as Bede describes, a trench from whence the sods were taken with strong stakes of wood fitted above from sea to sea. And this wall does extend from sea to sea because it starts from the Bristol Channel and runs north to the Dee estuary, along the borders of modern England and Wales. This is a busy man, ladies and gentlemen. The scientific and historical evidence strongly suggests that Offa's Dyke is the Severn Wall, and one wonders why this fortification was ever claimed to be the Dyke of King Offa. Of course, there is the curious name of this fortification, which appears to link the Dyke with King Offa. But did the Dyke get its name from the king, as one might naturally expect, or did the Dyke become linked to the king because of its name? And while the latter option may seem improbable, it is likely to be the correct answer to this conundrum. In fact, the true reason for the Severn Wall being called the Offa Wall is twofold. Firstly, the wall wound its way across the countryside like a huge great serpent, just as the River Nile snaked across the eastern end of the Sahara Desert in exactly the same manner. And a snake in the Greek is an ophis. And so this was not King Offa's Dyke at all. It was the Offa's Dyke, or Ophis Dyke, the Serpent Dyke. The Ophis Dyke only became linked to King Offa in later centuries because it had a similar name to the Mercian king. Perhaps the Mercian king was similarly named after a serpent, Ralph says. What do you think about that, Caleb, before we move on?
Well, I mean, it sounds like it actually was designed for defensive purposes, unlike a lot of the things that they say were defensive in nature, but were actually designed in ways that would have been more for like ceremonial purposes. But does this sound more ceremonial to you or more defensive to you? The design.
I mean, it sounds like it would be a bit of a bother to get across it. Pretty much the same way of Hadrian's Wall as well. But other than that, I think it was definitely ceremonial. It's almost like he was drawing his own map. But the way that Ralph talks about it as well, I mean, I'm getting vibes from last week's talk where the Picts Dyke. It seemed to be more than just a Picts Dyke affecting the earth around it, affecting the psychic field. I mean, this thing stretches across the entire, it stretches from one end to Wales to the other, north to south. It's purposefully built in the shape of a serpent, and that is certainly ceremonial. Because as we'll find out, that I mean, we've just talked about how and I think this is one of his public cults. The Serapis cult was one of his ones he didn't mind people finding out about. But what about the one he didn't? I mean, he married Julia Domna, who basically was heiress and probably a priestess, a high priestess, and in secret to this cult. So it seems pretty. It seemed, common sense would tell you that he was probably into that as well. Probably even more so, and the Serapis thing was probably just his dog whistle cult, one that they were all. I haven't done very much research on it, but it doesn't seem very very secret. You can find out information on the Serapis cult pretty quickly. So I'm guessing it was just. Yes. I mean, Jen's just asked, could it be symbolic as well? Thank you for the question, Jen. You've been talking all the way through this, so I much appreciate it. It's been giving me ideas. Yes, absolutely. I think it's symbolic. But I also think it's psychic. It was a psychic attack. It was to slow. So obviously, it was to slow down whoever was across there. But it was to physically divide the country from England to Wales.
Have you
Uh,
heard of the Antonine Wall?
I have, yes.
Have you ever been up there?
I haven't. No, I haven't been. I've been to Edinburgh, and I'm not sure if the Antonine Walls in that same. But I've been to Edinburgh. What a place!
And
Um,
also, there's
yeah.
supposed to be some walls that run north and south up into Scotland. I think maybe, I don't remember if it was like a north south wall that connected Hadrian's Wall to the Antonine Wall, but I actually think it wasn't that. I think it was actually a north south wall that they ran from the Antonine Wall even further north, because when they would make invasions into Scotland from the Antonine Wall, they wouldn't just march in; they would build a wall as they went, so that way they always had a wall with them. And they didn't occupy it for very long, but they did it a couple times where they'd start at the Antonine Wall and build a wall as they went north. But it would be interesting, if it was found out, upon closer inspection. Uh, have you ever seen that video about the Great Wall of China conspiracy? So they're saying it like how only a couple of portions of the Great Wall of China are account for the vast majority of what you see in magazines or on TV, or in general. Um, so like 90% of all of the pictures you see out there are just within a couple segments of the wall. But there's a lot of features about it that make it not seem like much of a practical tool for defense. For instance, like the windows that you would be shooting an arrow out of are backwards. In other words, it would be more. You would have the person on the outside of the wall attacking the wall has a better advantage with a bow and arrow than the person inside defending the wall. So they would never build it like that if it was meant to be a defensive structure. So the idea is that it has some other purpose besides a military purpose. And I kind of got that impression with Hadrian's Wall too. The idea that it's not really serving a whole. It's not, it's definitely not the best design for a military purpose. For a defensive wall. It's definitely seems to be more like symbolic, like a white picket fence. You know, um, and you see this same kind of concept with a lot of the Celtic forts. That they call forts. Where the angle of the walls are like not steep enough to keep enemies out. So uh they couldn't have been built with military purposes in mind because it's too easy for an attacker to overcome the fortification. um Kind of same thing with the Grianan of Alec, which is like where my ancestors supposedly uh lived in County Donegal when or in Donegal, Northern Ireland, when it was the Unil dynasty. There's this ring fort. In fact, Ralph has a picture of it here. I mean, to me, it kind of does look like a decent fortification.
What book's that?
Skoda.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got all that kind of stuff where he talks about the ring forts, and he talks about them being like amphitheaters instead, right?
Right. They're
Oh, man, we've got to do something.
yeah.
I mean, I'm going to buy that book at some point. I mean, I'm probably going to end up buying that whole series because it's just it's phenomenal, and also it's incredibly cheap. By the way, if you guys want to go ahead and buy this series, he has an offer up at the minute. It's like £32 for the whole series. I don't know, that's like $50 for all five King Jesus books. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
See, I
He started
mean,
talking about this. When he started talking about this, I thought, he just started the conversation with David Whitehead, but it didn't really go anywhere from there. I guess he was going to come back and do something with it. But he talked. He said, and it's something set off my head. I just finished watching Box Saga, reading Box Saga, and I thought, yeah, that would be right. You need amphitheaters for the contests, the Boxing Day contests, and things like this, where they would have contests to see who would be the most worthy male to to see who was the champion and who would get to procreate. And
right.
yeah.
But just in a general sense,
Go ahead.
so just to put an end cap on the whole point I was making is that any single instance of something that is said to be uh, a military construction, like a wall or a fort or anything like that, it probably would be worth it to double check and see if that's even realistic at all. Because so it might, I want to check out the Antonine Wall. I want to check out this ditch in Wales that you're talking about. I want to check out every single one of them because it's just been the case in so many other instances that the history books are trying to tell us that it was a it was a defensive thing, and it wasn't the case at all.
Something's
So
going on with your mic there. Um,
damn.
it's clipping a little bit, and it's like little. It's little clips, but I think it's
Did
just
I
when you're
come
moving around.
through?
Yeah, yeah, you're coming through. Great.
Okay.
No, I think it's when you're moving about a little bit and it's maybe hitting your clothing or something like that. It's clipping it a little bit. But other than that, it's fine. That's good. It sounds good to me. I'm hoping the end product's going to be just that way as well. Well, I did think about it. I thought this serpent, and I also I had our past conversations. I had a flash back to them about us talking about the 13th warrior and about seeing the snaking the dragon of fire coming down from the hills. And I thought, you see this thing that just stretches across the whole country. That's going to inspire some terror. It's going to seem like it's almost like Dune, like there's worms underneath the earth, and it's just bored a ditch right the way through it and divided the whole country, as if as if the earth cracked in that place, and and as we're going to see the El Gabal cult, they worship something that was destructive. It was a meteorite. It was probably a comet that crashed down. Um, and I think they worship that. They worship the destructive power of that. They saw it as a gift to teach
You
them
know how we were
how to inspire terror in their enemies.
you know how we had our radar on for any sort of ancient text that would be similar to the 13th warrior, how that would have like this grand like solar versus lunar uh clash like they have in the 13th warrior. And I said, the saga of Ragnar Lothbrok kind of fits the bill a little bit, because they had like this major clash. But have you read the British Edda? Because I think that might fit the bill quite well.
Yeah, I've read I've read some of it, but I'm not particularly well versed on it. I'm afraid. Could you go into what you're referring to?
Yeah. Um, he makes a lot of revisions to what is accepted far and wide in the Norse mythology uh, study. His first beef is with Snorri Sturluson because Snorri took the records that were discovered 100 years earlier, and he made a lot of changes to them. But it's his changes that caught on with the mainstream. So there's several like there's a whole laundry list of changes, but there's like like a handful of big ones that are huge. Uh, but what he does is he looks at the uh, original manuscript unfucked with by Snorri Sturluson, and then he actually finds that there's enough of a similar corpus in Samaria that matches the Eddas, and um, he reconstructs it, and he's able to identify the characters of the story, and it all basically comes down to this solar versus lunar clash that was on epic proportions, that is very reminiscent of what you see in the 13th warrior, where it's like these solar masculine hero dudes versus this deranged, like bloodthirsty lunar cult, and they clash pretty hardcore, with each other. Yeah. But some of the things that he had to fix were the main characters of quote unquote Norse mythology, which isn't Norse at all. For instance, um, everything you know about Odin is wrong because you're conflating everything you know about Odin is a combination of Thor and Wotan. And the word Odin is a title of Thor. But Wotan is a completely different person. Wotan is from the lunar cult. But Odin is a title of Thor. Okay, so that's the main. That's like the big, and there's a whole bunch of other ones as well of these uh, screw ups that happened with Snorri Sturluson. You know, um, but that solves most of them right there. Is when you realize that because why do you have Odin, who's supposed to be this high noble god, but he's got all of these um, really dark aspects of him. And then most people just toss that up to, oh well, he's a really complex character, and he just has all these really dark aspects to him, but it's just part of the complex character that he is. But it's actually not. It's the fact that Snorri is completely taken a villain and uh, a similar sounding title of Thor and combine them into one character. So you have a good guy and a bad guy completely just stitched together in this horrendous mistranslation. So it's not so much that he's this complex, mysterious character with all of these good qualities and all of these bad qualities. you know, it's not that at all. But another problem is that this is coming from an ancient time when the important people did have multiple names and multiple titles, you know, as a given. So Thor, uh, the king, he had a lot of names that he went by, and when he did come up in the text, it would be under a different name here and a different name there. But yeah, Wotan was the number one villain of the whole narrative. Identical with Loki. So actually Wotan and Loki were the same person. Yeah. And Balder.
Father, yeah.
Yeah.
And I kind of ran with that idea a little bit in my series, The Fall of Loki. So yes, fully enough, we're about to clear up a lot of illusions right now about who Severus Septimus is and who Julia Domna is and what exactly they represented and what they were into, what what their what their agenda was, and they were quite implicit about what they went, but they were quite um even though it was implicit, it was seen if you were in the know, it's quite loud dog whistles. So going back to Offa's Dyke, which isn't Offa's Dyke, it's the Ophis Dyke, the Serpent Dyke that wound its way across Wales. So Ralph says, the second reason for connecting this dyke with a serpent is that Septimus Severus was an emperor from Leptis Magna in modern Libya, but he married the indomitable Julia Domna from Emesa in Syria, modern Homs. Julia Domna was a direct descendant of the Sampsiramids, the priest kings of Emesa, the royal family who venerated the Elagabal, the meteoric Omphale stone that was discussed at length in previous books. And I'll just at this juncture, I actually want to just bring up a few pictures of Julia Domna so that people know what we're talking about here. So here she is, and ignore the dates on the bottom there. I don't know what I don't know why somebody's put those dates, and obviously that is not when she was born. And I also just wanted to get up another one. Kind of, I just think that this really it shows her character. There's something about this statue that just captures her. I don't know, aura. So there we are. Can you see that all right, Caleb? Give me a nod if that's cool. Yeah, cool. All right. So, yeah. All right. So, what are you going to say, bro? Oh, there we are. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's more coins as well. I found. But no, wait. We'll bring that up in a second. Yeah, there she is, and with the phoenix, no doubt. But apparently she wasn't. I mean, but it's the Roman eagle, right? And couldn't be the phoenix, right? No, but the phoenix of the Omphalos, sorry, of the Elagabalus stone, which she wasn't supposedly into at all. You know. So yes, she was a direct descendant of the Sampsirimids, the priest kings of Emesa, the royal family who venerated the Elagabal, the meteoric Omphalos stone that was discussed at length in previous books. Obviously, you'll have to go to those if you want to read them. The name for Sampsigaramus may be a protraction of the name Samson, the Greek rendering of the Israelite hero. The Aramaic Samson, Samsigeram, may mean bones of the sun and implies strength of the sun. This is her ancestors, okay? Bones of the sun. What? Can I like make a band like with that name? I just think it's. You can't see us because we're the bones of the sun. That's some heavy metal stuff right there. I'm telling you. The father of Samsigeramus, the first was Aziz, who was also known as Aziz the Arab, or Azizus, the Philarch of the Arabs. And so we are back to the same terminology that Ralph Ellis had went into in the previous books, which you will briefly go into now. The kings of Edessa were also called Arabs by Roman historians, and this has been taken by modern historians to mean that they were Nabatean or Arabian Bedouin. Just as is being claimed for the Samsigeramid kings of Emesa, but this was not the true meaning at all. Saul Josephus had denigrated these people as locusts because they had arrived from the east and destroyed Judea. Just like the locusts of the biblical plagues had similarly come from the east and destroyed Egypt. And a locust in Aramaic is an Arabea, or an Arab, in which case it would seem likely that the Samsigeramid monarchs of Emesa and the Abgarid monarchs of Edessa were closely related, and so they were all branded and stigmatized with the same derogatory title. Just to go back, even the names of the Samsons, which came before Julia Domna, it relates to serpent. Just to give you a heads up, so I didn't quite lose you on that part. The kings of Edessa. Okay, one next part. Yeah, the genealogy of okay. I need to get this one up as well. It says the genealogy of Septimius Severus and Julia Domna. Note that their family governed not only Emesa in Syria, but also Palmyra. Note also the genealogical links with Mauritania, Commagene, and if we go back a little further, with Edessa too. This family was also the guardian of the Elagabal Omphalos stone, the Holy Grail, in the 3rd century. Emperor Elagabalus took the sacred Grail stone to Rome, but it is not known what happened to it afterwards. Previous books in this series have speculated that it was taken to Chester, in Britain. Moving on. A Latinized AZ are spelt in the Aramaic with the prefix, and it's with the prefix Aziz. But as we saw in the previous chapter, a possible Aramaic spelling and meaning for the name of King Aziz was Azuz, meaning strong or mighty, and Aziz is simply a superlative of that meaning strong, or very strong. Again, it seems highly likely that there was a close family relationship between the Edessan and the Emessan dynasties. And if the links between Emesa and Edessa appear close at this point, they are about to become closer still. Emperor Severus's wife was Julia Domna, and they had 2 sons, Emperor Caracalla and Emperor Gita, but Julia's sister was Julia Mesa, the grandmother of Emperor Elagabalus and Emperor Alexander Severus. Emperor Elagabalus from the Readers may remember Emperor Elagabalus from the book King Jesus. He was the slightly deranged emperor who was the high priest of the Elagabal Omphalos stone and had an operation in an attempt to turn himself into a woman. But now we can see exactly what Emperor Elagabalus was trying to do with this castration-type operation. He was obviously attempting to become a eunuch or an androgyne so that he could become a galley high priest, just as Sir Percival the Galahad had likewise done in Arthurian history. Yet the biblical Jesus Izaz also asked his disciples to become eunuchs for this very similar Galilean sect, the Galilean sect, and the capital city of Jesus Izaz, a small kingdom, was Edessa in northern Syria, while Emperor Elagabalus came from Emesa in Syria. And if Emperor Elagabalus was a Gali high priest, then it is also clear that these Gali high priests must have venerated the conical Omphalos stone, the Elagabal. The Elagabal was the primary cult object of Emperor Elagabalus and therefore of the Gali priesthood. While in Merlin Grail, Sir Percival the Galahad had become the guardian of the Holy Grail. And yet the Holy Grail was not simply a golden chalice or even just a bloodline. It was also described in Wolfram von Eichenbach's Parzival as being a stone. Many a valiant knight resides by the Grail at Mun Salvash. They live by a stone whose nature is pure. If you know of nothing of it, it shall be named for you here. It is called Lapsit Exelis. By that stone's power, the phoenix burns away, turning to ashes, yet those ashes bring it back to life. That stone is also called the Grail. So the Holy Grail of Arthurian history can also be seen as a stone, which is strongly associated with the phoenix. And yet the sacred Elagabal stone of Emperor Elagabalus was always embossed with the symbol of the phoenix, as can be seen in pictures of coins where Elagabalus is on one side, and on the other is this massive stone with a phoenix on it, drawn by 4 horses. And so, Arthurian history and Roman history dovetail once more at this point, because the Elagabal stone is quite obviously one of the aspects or manifestations of the Arthurian Holy Grail. The Grail is a multifaceted concept, an artifact, and here is one of those facets displayed for everyone to see in black and white, or in gold. This small conical stone is the Holy Grail, the sacred talisman that permeates so many ancient mythologies. I want to know more about all these ancient mythologies. I don't know about you guys. So the lithic stone aspect of the Holy Grail was once a real artifact that could be paraded around Rome in a quadriga chariot This was the lithic form of the Holy Grail that had been guarded and maintained by the Gali high priesthood, by the Knights of the Round Table, by the Grail princesses, and even by Emperor Elagabalus. So the Holy Grail is not a mythology. It was once a real component within the real history of the Roman Empire, but it is now a lost and largely forgotten artifact and history that has faded into the mists of time. It was demonstrated in Jesus, King of Edessa, that the sacred conical stone that Emperor Elagabalus venerated was the very same sacred conical stone that the biblical Jacob venerated when he was near Haran, just south of Edessa. The pillow or stone that Jacob anointed with oil. But it was also demonstrated in that book that Jacob's ladder, which was in the same location as the sacred stone, was actually a reference to the sacred hill at Sogmatar near Haran, which was also the necropolis of the Edessan monarchy. Caleb, do you want to go into a little bit about the Edessan monarchy for people who haven't seen our Tracking the Grail?
Yeah, well, you had the one character, King Isis, who was descended from Cleopatra, but he also had an admixture of several other royal lines, but primarily he was part of the Edessan monarchy. Edessa is centrally located in the same place that Göbekli Tepe is located in Syria. This monarchy was essentially part of this Elagabal cult, part of the Gali cult of castrated priests and all this kind of thing. And the monarchy was part of it as well. So it was a royal line. It came under the control of Rome. Not exactly sure when, but at a certain point, Rome came to control the region, and they got resentful and wanted to control their own territory, independent of Rome, and that's when King Isis mobilized to actually go to war with Rome, and he failed, and he was imprisoned in England, in Chester, and they had a special prison fort built in England that they put him in, and he lived the rest of his life there. But while he was there, he built a temple inside of the prison fort, that venerated his cult, from Edessa. But Edessa, the Edessan monarchy was also an astrological. They venerated the zodiac. That was a big part of theirs. I wonder if, they might have venerated the zodiac itself even more than the meteor. It'd be interesting. It'd also be interesting to check and double check with, look at a Mesa and see if they venerated the zodiac as well. But I am about to run out of batteries. I apologize, everybody. I was had to go to the doctor yesterday, and had to reschedule everything and all that kind of stuff, and yeah.
I mean, we can pick it up next week. Yeah, do you want? I just
Yeah, I think we could just carry this right on. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. That like there's so much to say on that. I mean, people don't know. I mean, Ralph Ellis was just about to get into it, but Elagabalus, it turns out, tried to be the new Jesus, and they actually had to put him in the same prison that Jesus, the real King Jesus, was put into, and they actually rebuilt the Zodiac that Caleb was referring to there. All this is coming up, and as I say, got massive thanks to Ralph Ellis for doing the legwork for us here. It's just unbelievable, and not only that, for giving us hints that we've been putting off for quite some time. When you actually look at the discussion we had, it's laden with things. You could tell that he was interested in coming back, and maybe we can get him back on and to give us more detail about these subjects. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's been a fantastic turnout. It's been one of the biggest turnouts of the night. I didn't even really properly introduce us all because there was just so much to get into. I wanted to get straight into it there. But yeah, all the support is overwhelming. Thank you very much for coming, everybody. Jen, amazing questions as usual. Everybody, she's got a podcast over at Matt Presti Substack. If you could go check that out, it'd be fantastic. Caleb, thank you very much for coming. Massive appreciation. I know we almost didn't have a podcast this week, so it was great that you could change up your schedule and attend. And everybody go visit his site, vanhelsinglibrary.com. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube, I'll be restreaming the last stream that we did on there very soon. Oh, you guys have a fantastic night, and we'll see you on the next one. See you later, Caleb. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Later.